Like many U.S. communities, Erie County is confronted with frustration over increased levels of poverty. Solutions to this problem demand more collaboration, partnerships, and cross-sector efforts with more diverse partners than have ever been tried before. As a first step in getting to these solutions, Erie Together brought nationally known author and consultant Jay Connor to our region. Mr. Connor has consulted with many communities throughout the U.S. and Canada, teaching them how to work differently to address social problems and to set and reach significant goals. This systems approach allows collaboration to occur across the traditional boundaries of organizations and sectors that exist in every community. In the spring of 2010, Jay Connor met with several hundred local residents to describe these new ways of working.
What do we mean by working differently? What does it mean by focusing and actually achieving the outcomes? How is that different or more than what we have presently, and that's good people doing good work? So what are we trying to distinguish here when we talk about working differently? The solution always resides across sectors. The type of work that we're undertaking, what we're looking to do, that future that we're looking to create, can't be contained and owned by any one sector. The collaboration must be intentional. The collaboration should be, who do we bring together to achieve the solution, not who do we bring together to do the same work that we've done before. So collaborations are built about the achievement of the outcome, and not collaboration about we're people that do very similar types of things. The hard work is, what do you have to do about your structures and your processes and your measures to get to that desired state? Because everything that we do in community, we already have an existing set of structures, process, and measures. But what do the present structures and process and measures get us? They got us what we got. And if we don't do the heavy lifting of saying, what are the new structures, what are the new processes, what are our new measures, we're kind of doing Einstein's definition of insanity, right? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Our future has to be, what can I do? What is it that I need to do to be able to help us as a community get to those outcomes? And that's why this ownership in terms of working differently has to be profoundly at that community level and at its leadership level. This is one of my favorite charts. This is the chart of good people doing good things in Rochester, Minnesota, a very well-to-do community that had all of the state-of-the-art programs and activities in an early childhood system here in Rochester, Minnesota. The problem was, having invested more than any other per capita community in terms of early childhood, they were still only achieving about a third of their children ready for kindergarten when they walked through that kindergarten door. So the message here is not that we don't need programs or good activities, but we need those programs and activities focused on what is it that we're trying to accomplish. Be measured by, are we accomplishing those outcomes, and not do we have the state-of-the-art program or activity. Is we as communities have to design our work differently, because this design doesn't get our children any better off, doesn't get our families any better off, doesn't get our educational economics any higher. When we think about the values of working differently, and these are the values that we're going to be focusing on tonight. It's going to be about that value of about accountability, and plus the value of engagement. The value of engagement is we have permission to move forward if the way that we're going to test ourselves on moving forward is, will more people join us? If it becomes a closed loop system that we don't care whether more people join us, then in many ways we failed the basics of engagement. When we think under accountability, there's two levels of focus in accountability. The first one is what we've talked about already, and that's the outcomes. Are we very clear and very crisp about those outcomes? Because we can't hold ourselves accountable if we don't have clarity about what it is that we're trying to achieve. Think of so many community efforts that talk about we want to have a stronger quality of life. Well, how do I know whether we're making progress on that quality of life if I can't measure it? So accountability has a lot to do with clarity about our outcomes and rigor about our measures of those outcomes. To be able to do that, we need to be neutral in terms of the range of activities that we have, the range of programs that we have in our communities, because those programs and those activities should be measured to the extent that they propel us forward to those outcomes. To be able to work differently, the cornerstones of that come from clarity about that aspiration. Are we making that same movie together? Do we all achieve or focus on what it is that we're trying to achieve? And do we have clear measures of that? Will we know it when we get there? And that will we know it is the accountability side. We have to have clarity about our community before we can have clarity about our aspiration. Our definition of community was, where can we share an aspiration, but also where can we achieve that? Is that the entire Erie region, specifically the Erie County, has to be our community. We have to think about how all of us working forward and being successful together. But what the work of this community is not to create new programs or activities, which are represented by that patchwork quilt at the top. The work that we're talking about, the implementation plan, is how do we build that arrow, those structures, those processes, and the measures that allow all of the energy, all of the activities that exist within our community to align on that arrow to be able to hit that target of that outcome that we're looking for. So we're not talking about building all sorts of new programs or new activities. We're talking about how do we have a community conversation about the structures and the process and the measures to be able to get us to that aspiration. There's some architectural components to this, and it was Erie Together, and really the basis that we're talking about is the Erie region as a whole. And the center of this is that aspiration. That what is that centerpiece? What aligns all of the work that we're trying to accomplish? It's not enough to hold a meeting here at the Avalon and say, you come to us. Successful communities engage communities by going to the community. We mentioned that there needs then to be a steward team as well, and management capacity in terms of how do we bring some energy, some management skill to the outcome to balance all of the resource that we've dedicated in the past to the various activities. We think that there needs to be 4 integral areas that we need to work on. And they've described those 4 areas as connecting with that aspiration. Again, that aspiration around economics and around education. We need to do a much better job making sure that every one of our children starts the education journey ready to succeed in that education journey. And so we need to have our children ready as they walk through the kindergarten door. And then we need to make sure that in the state of Pennsylvania or in the East Coast or in the nation, that your 3rd graders perform as well as 3rd graders anywhere else. There's no reason that they can't. So that's the first action team, is how do we get those kids off to a fast start? The second action team is how do we then, once they're moving down that start, how do we align that education with careers? How do we connect that in terms of that larger whole of the community? How do we connect that in terms of a child when they're in the 4th grade understanding, here are the choices of classes that I have to take if in fact I want to be a doctor? So they're not surprised when they finish with their high school and say, oh my God, if only I knew. We have to stop the if only I knew conversations within our community. The next one is really focusing on individual and family financial stability. None of this is possible if we continue to have families powerfully at risk. And so there has to be a focus as a community is how do we stabilize that? How do we address that? And how do we make sure that those families become better parents and those children become better parents in the future and that they have stronger economic viability as an individual or as a family? And the last element was, how do we make sure that we're connecting the kind of economic development that we're pursuing as a community with the kind of workforce development and skill sets that we're developing as a community? How do we make sure that those are aligned? How do we make sure that they're connected? How do we make sure that Erie region is the place that anybody's thinking about opening a company in Pennsylvania has to consider?